Good afternoon, I guess it is. History 1700 students. This is your first of hopefully only two instructional videos for this semester. Like I said last time, didn't cover in class. I covered World War II and the Depression with those videos, and that is one of your short answers you can do this week, is comparing the presentation styles, the interpretation, the biases, I guess you could say, of those two videos. But also, the other choice we didn't cover in class is Japanese internment. And Japanese internment camps, of course, were a measure, I should say, in World War II to keep Japanese Americans, like 70-some-odd% who were actual citizens of the United States, in check, because they felt like these Japanese Americans would spy for the Japanese government, would do something subversive that would help the Japanese efforts during World War II. That never came to pass, however. So it is a case of war/racial hysteria, and as we look at it in hindsight today, we think, oh, that was horrible. You know, they shouldn't have done that. That took away basic human rights of all those individuals. Well, as we've seen in American history a little bit before, weird things happen during wartime. And when you have fear that a group of people might help the war effort of your enemy, then things go differently. So famous order, Executive Order 9066, in February of 1942, passed without much discussion. And just like the Constitution's treatment of slavery, it did not include language that said Japanese or Japanese Americans. But we clearly knew exactly who they're talking about to put them in these relocation centers, as they were called. You know, they used euphemistic terms to not show how bad they were. I don't know what I'm trying to say there, but anyway, so what happened was these Japanese Americans got the order, and sometimes only had a few days, a few weeks to leave, and some of them had no idea where they were going. They had to sell their belongings, fire sale prices. They had to sell their homes. Okay, they had to give up their livelihoods, okay, at a moment's notice, to be put in these Japanese American internment camps, which were mainly for Japanese Americans who were centered on the western coast, mainly California, Oregon, Washington. About 120,000 of them, something like that, who went to these camps and waited patiently for their fate, what would have happened to them. And thankfully, the motivation for these camps, it wasn't as sinister as obviously the concentration camps for the Jews started by the Nazis in World War II. They were just, like I said before, to keep an eye on these Japanese Americans, and the aim obviously wasn't to kill them. It was just to put them in a holding place where they could make sure they weren't doing anything that they shouldn't. So they were in these tiny barracks, not very well insulated. They were given jobs, yes, but those jobs didn't pay very much, and so they just had to get by, have their own little life in their own little city. Basically, that's what they were, little cities, and get by until they heard differently. And so they lasted from 1942 to 1945, and gross violation of human rights, obviously, and taking away their right to their own lives, really. And interestingly, also, well, sorry, they were the Japanese internment camps. I forgot to mention this. They were mostly in the West. California, Arizona, Utah had one. Idaho had one. Let's see, even Arkansas had one. I think there was one in Wyoming as well. There's one right here in the state of Utah. I wrote a story about it, let's see, 2 years ago. I'll include that link to that story in this email that accompanies this link. But Topaz, Japanese internment camp called Topaz, right near Delta. And if you want a sobering history, visit that Topaz Museum in Delta. And it has an example of a barrack that they lived in. You visit the actual site, which is about 15 miles away from Delta, and there's hardly anything there. But thankfully, a Boyd and Eagle project that identified where things were, because those barracks, those temporary shelters, were repurposed in other things, and so that's why not much remains of that camp. But anyway, what I was getting at before I remembered I needed to mention that is in 1988 there were passed a Civil Liberties Act by the first of all Reagan administration, but then it fell to Bush 41, Bush the first, George H.W. Bush, to carry it out. But basically that Civil Liberties Act gave the former Japanese camp internees $20,000 for their pain and suffering, and apologized, a formal apology to them from the U.S. government. Okay, these camps closed in 1945, and it took until 1988 to 1990 to get any kind of redress, which is, in my mind, embarrassing of the U.S. government. And another thing, historiographically, after that Civil Liberties Act, the apology, the stipends to those who were in the camps, and some of them didn't even get the stipends because they were dead by then, so it just gave any surviving members that stipend, that $20,000 stipend. But interesting thing also is, after that apology, that act, it was okay to talk about the Japanese internment camps in history books and in history classes, and so then finally, after that, you get it in history classes and history textbooks, which is interesting. So the government apologized, so I guess it's okay to talk about it. So yeah, just again, like I said at first, a bad case of war/racial hysteria. Looking back now, we see it as a gross violation of human rights, but back then they didn't even faze them, because it was a wartime measure that they felt was necessary. So interesting how time periods can change your perspective. Okay, historiography in action, that's just I've been telling you this whole time. But anyway, that's that. That's one of the questions. There is an article there, and then you can read my article about Topaz, the local flare of Japanese internment camps. Very fascinating subject. I recommend both articles. They're very good. But just get your short answers in by Friday, and next Wednesday, November 11th, Veterans Day, we won't have class either. I'll do another instructional video for that one, and then we'll return to normal class on Wednesday, November 18th. Wednesday, November 18th, I will also put out a sign-up sheet for times and dates to present your historiographical presentations. So, signing out for today, and we will see you through video next time, and then we'll see you in class again November 18th. Thanks for your patience with me, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.